Maybe you thought to yourself, I'm 70. I don't want to be working every day. Or I'm burnt out from my business. I got to do something about this. Or maybe you're more direct. I'm going to sell in 3 to 5 years. Or I want to know what my business is worth. I'm starting to consider an exit. Maybe I should sell my business. Or if I can get $1 million, I'll sell my business. Or I'm just thinking about selling. I don't know what my options are. Or my friend made me an offer a couple of years ago. I wasn't interested in selling them, but I'm considering it now. You have probably got a great business and you're ready to exit. But if you said or think of any of the above, this webinar is for you. There are definitely, in those thoughts that if you've had any of them, there's some red lights that I see that are blinking, that are warning signs that, hey, there may be some additional steps, some knowledge gaps that you may need that this webinar will address. So welcome. This is a webinar for you. If you've been thinking about any of those things, if you've been thinking about selling your business, I'm Joe. I am the founder and lead broker at Legacy Entrepreneurs, and I've created this to kind of guide you through the path, introduce you to our process, and that'll help you think about how to get your business ready to sell, what to expect. Maybe you kind of want to DIY the process. Hopefully you see from this webinar why a broker is super helpful, but if not, hopefully it equips you to kind of better DIY it on your own. And for some businesses, that's the right move. So I mentioned that when you've had those thoughts about selling, and if you're not already like, I'm going to sell for this amount and this is who's going to buy it, here are the things that, if that's not you and you've just been thinking about it, here are the things that I'm worried about for you that tells me, we've got to do some work to get prepared. One in particular is, if I can sell for this amount, I will sell the business. Just be very careful that what the business is worth has no relation to what you need to retire. So the value of the business is super critical, right? But the relationship to what you need to retire, there's not a relationship there. Hopefully the two are aligned and it brings you an asset that you need. But, that's one big kind of issue that people who are starting to think about selling make is, I need to sell it for this amount. Well, maybe it's not worth that amount. So that's something a broker can help you with. How much is the business worth? Also, what's the right strategy? Your friend may have come to you like a couple years ago, or a competitor. Maybe they're not the right buyer. Maybe you should be selling to an individual. Maybe you should be selling to a private equity firm. Maybe you should take the approach of finding a competitor or a strategic buyer. But maybe you shouldn't just take the first offer that you had from, your friend, business colleague you go fishing with. And then finally, if you're thinking about it, you're not sure in 3 to 5 years, what is the process? Like, what are all the steps that need to be done? What does it look like from the time that you say, yes, I'm ready to sell, to this thing is sold, and the Monday after selling the business? So let's get into this webinar because it'll walk you through the process with Legacy Entrepreneurs, address some of these issues, how to tackle them, how to think about them. And maybe you're just going to go down a different path. Maybe you'll list by yourself. That's possible. Whatever is right for you, that's what I believe in. So we'll get going here with the webinar. I'm going to share a presentation to help walk us through this process. So, Business Owner's Guide to Selling Your Business. So here's the process. This is how you win. I've tried to break it down into just 3 phases, 3 steps, so you can, it's easy to kind of segment out, right? It's consultation, discovery, to kind of understand what this business is worth, get a ballpark of value. Then in phase 2, we're going to get it ready to sell. And then in phase 3, actually working with buyers to close this deal. So consultation discovery, it's really about what's right for you. This is a phase where it's really good to talk to a financial advisor at the same time, or hopefully even before you engage with a business broker like myself. Your exit goals. What do you really need? Some people think that I need $1.5 million from this asset. Maybe you already have other assets that allow you to retire now, and you don't need a certain dollar value from the business. This step is also about, what is the range of value? Is it ready to take to market? Is it worth taking it to market? Starting to assess what your business looks like from the outside in, from the perspective of a buyer. And the perspective of a buyer is something I'm going to keep coming back to because it's really critical to think about through this whole process. So then, preliminary documentation, we also need to gather the documents that's going to help us go from a range of value in the opinion of value to this is the listing price. Also critical here is as we look through the financial performance and we look through the books, how complicated are these books? Are they understandable? I can look through it and be like, all right, here's what I think about it. But again, that buyer perspective, is someone going to look through the business as it is today, as we can present it today, and say, yep, this makes sense to me. I'm going to buy it. You know the business. You already know it's valuable, right? But again, the buyer perspective, a lot of the things that, need to be done in this process, a lot of it is not changing the business. It's about confidence building versus confidence detracting. I show you clean books that's super easy to understand, confidence building. I show you the same financial performance with books that are confusing, confidence detracting. So another part that we might discover in this preliminary documentation is bookkeeper. We need a cleanup job. We need someone to get this organized. So it's really confidence building for a buyer. So again, consultation, discovery, we're looking to understand what the business is, what's right for you. Maybe we need to bring in a financial advisor. Maybe we just need to bring in your current financial advisor, see what your positioning is. Then we can start looking at your business asset as just a piece of the broader puzzle. And then we can start looking through greater documentation. So as we're getting to what are we actually going to list at? So now we're starting to talk about value and valuation. That question earlier of what is the value of my business? How much is it worth? So here are a few things that drive value and also common add backs. One thing that's not on this slide that comes up all the time that I want to pick up is that value is all about cash flow. What is the net income being brought in? What are you putting in your pocket every year? What could you put in your pocket every year if you weren't expensing certain things through the business? It's not about equipment and it's not about inventory. Sometimes the business is worth the value of the equipment or the value of the inventory, but it's very rarely generates this much cash and buy the equipment and the inventory from me. You need the equipment and the inventory to make the cash. A buyer's either buying one or the other. All right, I'll just buy the fair market value of the equipment. That'll help me generate cash, or I'll buy the cash flow, and the cash flow's got to come with the equipment because that equipment makes the cash. So again, it really is about cash. Equipment is a tough sell for people to buy into, especially because then what's the fair market value of the equipment? Maybe you bought it at $20,000, but it's like a car, right? You drive it off the lot, you run something through that machine one time. That is a used piece of equipment, and you've probably been depreciating it for years. So even on your books, that asset, that current asset is just not worth that much. Sometimes that is what is going to be sold as the business, and that is where the value of the business comes from. That's fine. And that could be a few $100,000, depending on what the equipment is, what it does, how specialized it is. But we need to be honest about the business is really about cash flow. And usually when we're talking about buying a business, the value of the business, it's the value of the money that it's bringing in. And we also need to be honest about, especially when we look at these factors that drive value. Are you an okay business? And that's fine. People can make a lot of money with what might be considered by the market an okay business. Are you a good business or are you a best business? Because this all factors into these valuation benchmarks. So just here's some, industries that we might find and then try to apply some sort of earnings, discretionary earnings multiple, net income multiple, EBITDA multiple to. So again, most businesses, by definition, are going to be, in the median, the average. Let's look at restaurants. You're going to be around 2.1. This 2.8, this higher, this pushing 3, that's really hard. Like, you got to have a lot of locations and you need to have really, really great margins, super clear books to be at this high point. Again, most are going to be in the middle, and then a lot are going to be on the lower end. I think a lot of people, a lot of owners want to say, I'm really going to be like, I'm great, right? I'm the best. We just got to be honest with ourselves. Most will be near average. And if you want to be best, then these are some of the things that you need to think about. Also on the add backs, because when we figure out what multiple are we using, we also want to say, okay, we need to multiply by what number, what net income number, where you need to make add backs about. Are you paying yourself above market rate? You have family on payroll, but they're not super critical to the business. You have a personal vehicle on your books. That's all fine, right? Totally fine. Totally get it. Lifestyle business, I don't think it's not a dirty word. It's an amazing word. It's a smart word. But again, good bookkeeping, getting a bookkeeper in here to keep track of things like what are we adding back? How do we make it super clear that, hey, we added all these things back because they're just extra lifestyle type expenses that a new owner, you as the new owner, would not have to take on. So phase 2, preparation and marketing. What is the story? And this is all about what's in it for me, for the buyer. Look, you as the business owner, you have an amazing business, right? That's why I want to work with you. The buyer is also going to tell you, you have an amazing business. They're going to butter you up. We need to butter the buyer up and say, hey, you are great. You're so smart. You are great at tech and sales and marketing. And I have a great business with solid fundamentals. And you are going to be able to take this to the next level because you're so great, right? What is in it for the buyer? What is that story? What are the key things that you have built over time that's good for them? That's the key part that we're looking for here. We need to understand the story, and then that's going to able to get us to what is the right marketing tool. Who are we targeting? Are we keeping things off BizBuy, LoopNet, and Axial because we need to target specific buyers that are already in your industry? Do we need to target restaurant groups? Do we need to go to a trade show and like look at the people attending that? Like those are the buyers for you. Depends on the story, depends on what is in it for the buyer. And then finally, maintaining confidentiality. This is about the systems in place to make sure we're not distributing your confidential financial information and business information to people who don't need it. Like one of the things I do all the time, and again, one of the values that a broker brings is I'm going to list this business. I'm going to get a bunch of people who are like, I'd love to see more about this business. And then I look through them like, well, you live out of state. You want to be an absentee owner for something that needs to be hands-on. And you don't seem to have any financial wherewithal to put a down payment, much less take on a big bank loan, right? Like you don't want to be spending your time doing that yourself. Let someone like me handle that. But that's an important part, right? You're going to have, a confidential, sterilized teaser of what this business is with a description. You'll have the story with it, but then you need to be able to screen people so you're not sending information to people who are a waste of your time. And we're going to be asking you all these questions and kicking the tires. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, do you want to put in an offer? Like, no, I can only afford $10. Why was I answering all your questions, right? You don't want to be wasting your time, and you don't want to be disclosing confidential information to people who are wasting your time. So again, this is all about the what's in it for me, for the buyer, and the story behind the business. So we're going to obviously focus on the strengths, but we also have kind of what else, is involved in a deal structure and what we're selling to the buyer and what do we need to kind of address to overcome obstacles for the buyer. That's what really kind of the identifying strengths and opportunities is about. What makes your business stand out in the market, and then, what are some of the weaknesses that you might have? So let's take a manufacturer, for example. Maybe in the last couple of years, you've had softer sales, but you've been taking on really good customers and you've been taking on maybe some lower margin jobs because the trend lines in the industry are to go to a different type of manufacturing that you are really good at. And now you have all the right buyer relationships or customer relationships to make that happen. You want to be transparent about, hey, we've had softer sales, but this is like the strategy, and you, buyer, are going to inherit something that's like really poised. You're going to get a really good customer book going forward, right? That's how we understand the operational weaknesses, what is going on in the business, and telling that in a consistent story that is good for the buyer. That's, again, what I can help you think through and create materials that say, hey, this is what we're selling. Like, here's some warts over here, but it's all part of a picture that really makes sense for you. Another part of this is in that story, Do you, for example, as the owner, need to maintain some sort of relationship with the business as a consultant, for example? So, hey, this is really complicated. One of the weaknesses of the business is that, like, you've really got to learn these particular systems. It's not widely known. Like, we have proprietary software. So, like, you've got to know how to do that day one. And okay, as part of this deal, because we need to craft something that's good for the buyer, you're going to stay on 60 days as a consultant to show this is how you do it. And then you're going to say, and I'll be available on an hourly rate to come up, to answer any questions that come up later. We got to think through these terms, and a broker is going to help you structure that. And again, a buyer may freak out like, well, I don't know how to use this software. If you have a broker helping you out constructing terms of an agreement, these are obstacles that can be overcome. And the fact that you're ready for it, again, confidence building versus confidence detracting. And so once we have a story with the buyer and we are getting to a point where it's like, okay, we have a good buyer, they know the information, they know what they're doing, we have an offer that aligns with our listing price. Now we are going into diligence. The buyer's saying, hey, I just want the exclusive right to look through it. Now I'm going to set up a data room. We're going to have all the information in there. They're going to be able to sift through it, ask a bunch of questions, really dive deep. It's a painful process, right? What they're buying is way more complicated than a house, than a car. It's a huge transaction. So they're probably going to have 30, 60, maybe even 90 days to look through everything that they need to feel comfortable buying this business. So again, what's in it for them? Confidence building. We want to show them a clear story with financials that back that up. So by the time they're doing diligence, they already feel good about this process and they're looking to validate the good feelings that they're having, not looking for a way to kill the deal. Like that's how we want to set things up to begin with. And then that's what this due diligence hope process looks like. Then we close, purchase agreement, close with lenders. The buyer will obviously, I can introduce people to lenders, but the buyer is ultimately going to need to seal the deal with the lender, pick who they're going to use, and take it all on, if that's part of their financing arrangement. Also, part of post-closing, this is an important thing that brokers can help pick out, and as well as kind of help you organize to, again, what's in it for the buyer, what do they need, what are all the permits and licenses that you have in the business? Are they attached to you? Does the new owner need to get those licenses themselves? Is there someone else in the business that has a master license that the business can operate under? We need to make sure that the new entity that's going to be running the business, because more often than not, this is going to be an asset sale in which the new owners, they're going to have their own entity, you're going to have yours, and that new entity is going to own everything of the business and your entity goes away. So the new entity needs to have all these licenses. So these are some common ones, not everything, but we need to work together so that we know, okay, new buyer, you got everything here because we want to set you up for success because you want them to be successful, right? So that they can pay their debt, they can make this acquisition happen. So that is essentially the process at a pretty high level with some tips that I've picked out. That Monday after can be really tough for people because you've grown such a great business. You've put your heart and soul into it. And now what are you going to do Monday morning? Hopefully with your financial advisor, your wealth manager, you've talked about that. If you don't have a wealth manager and you sell a business for $3 million, guess what? You now have a very small investment firm that you are either running yourself or having a wealth manager help you with. So I can introduce you, make those introductions to you. I can recommend some travel agents as well if you're just like, I'm ready to go. I just need to go to Fiji, go to the Keys, be on a beach, whatever it is. So, but the first step before we get to that last step is you can download my guide on how to sell your business. It has a lot of this information. It has checklist of documents you need. It has workshop pages of like, hey, why do you want to sell this business? What are the strengths? And you can also schedule a consultation with me. Let's talk about your specific business. What are you looking to do? Go all the way back to like that first page. Like, what are your goals? Like we can have an initial consultation, start getting that big picture. What is it worth? What else do you need to get this thing ready? Who else do you need to talk to? So I appreciate you joining this webinar. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you see the value of using a broker for your process. And if not, Hopefully, at least there's some tips and tricks here of, okay, this is what I need to get ready. These are some key people that I need to engage as I go down this process and start thinking about what is the right choice for me and how do I exit my business and how do I benefit one last time from this legacy that I've created. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm Joe from Legacy Entrepreneurs. Please feel free to reach out. I'll make sure that I leave contact information, website, and the comments or captions of this webinar. Thank you.